This case, which we will get into, is about the NCAA, and this is especially interesting to me because I played volleyball all 4 years in college, and I was very educated within the rules and regulations of the NCAA and violations that could have occurred if any rules were broken. On the agenda today, I already introduced myself, but next we're going to look at the NCAA and its background, have a case summary, look at the problems within the case, questions for discussion, the relation of the case study to the course, and then the future of the NCAA as a company. The case is case number 19 from the book, and it is entitled The NCAA Enforces Penalties in College Athletics. The company background is that the NCAA was formed in 1906, and its original goal was to protect student athletes from being physically endangered and exploited during their time as an athlete. As college sports grew in popularity and complexity, the organization developed further with a constitution and bylaws that could be amended as new issues arose. This led to the division of the NCAA into Division 1, 2, and 3, and schools could choose which division they wanted to compete in. Each division has its own leadership group made up of university presidents and officials who can create and enforce policies and rules, but overall the NCAA is governed by its president and executive committee, with additional committees and boards helping oversee specific areas like legislation or compliance. The NCAA established key principles for the conduct of intercollegiate athletics. This included institutional control and responsibility, student athlete well-being, sportsmanship and ethical conduct, sound academic standards, rules compliance, and recruiting. The NCAA clearly outlines what is considered ethical and unethical in their eyes. Their basis within everything is honesty and sportsmanship for their ethical conduct. There are different kinds of unethical behaviors that the NCAA highlights, and some of these include things like fraud, withholding information, gambling on sports, and failing to follow regulations. Overall, the NCAA uses a compliance-based approach to ethics, and this organization creates rules, educates members, and enforces consequences to maintain fairness and protect student athletes. The organization emphasizes respect and integrity, aiming to keep college sports competitive and entertaining without sacrificing the health, safety, or education of the athletes. The NCAA is built around ethics. That's its core, and it considers not only athletes and coaches, but the broader college community and the integrity of sports as a whole. When we summarize the case, we can start with the main idea that college athletics play a major role in shaping a university's culture, especially at schools with strong sports programs. Football is a big example of this. They make huge amounts of revenue for their colleges, and this gives them more media coverage and more broadcasting deals, and more money is brought in from these colleges, and sometimes the public face of the college or university is the coaches or the athletes. So money does not just come from ticket sales. It comes from school visibility, alumni donations, and student applications. And so many universities invest millions of dollars into their stadiums and facilities because athletics can strengthen school pride and community loyalty. With all this money comes pressure, and coaches, players, staff, administrators, universities as a whole can feel this pressure, and it can create opportunities for these individuals to take part in misconduct. It can also make it difficult for universities to objectively address problems, especially when a successful program would be reputationally tarnished. Because of these challenges, the NCAA was created to serve as a more objective governing body. The NCAA sets rules, enforces standards, and promotes ethical conduct, academic success, and fair play. While major scandals do occur, they are not the norm. Most programs follow the rules or only commit minor violations. When violations do happen, universities are expected to report them and may impose their own sanctions to show a commitment to compliance. Overall, the case shows that ethics and accountability are not just important in educational institutions or athletics, but in the world as a whole. The case problem is that today college sports are more than just a competition. It is a major business and it generates millions of dollars across the US. And with this amount of money, issues in ethics and compliance are gonna happen. So this raises an important question. Do some schools overlook problems because their athletic programs bring in so much revenue? Because if this happens, it creates a serious conflict of interest. When winning and profit become the priority, ethics can take the backseat. There have been many high-profile scandals that have shaken the college sports world, and today we are going to look at specific ones. Looking at specific examples of college sports scandals, we can see how the schools responded and what actions, if any, the NCAA took against them. The first is the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where there was a 16-year period where 3,000 students received credit for classes they did not intend or complete meaningful work in or work at all. Half of these students were athletes, and this involved fake grades and little to no academic oversight. They were called paper classes. The misconduct was believed to be an effort to keep athletes' eligibility and was made worse by weak institutional control. This was an academic misconduct because administrators and faculty might have felt pressure to overlook what they were doing to keep athletes eligible, to keep the revenue going that the school is generating. But this case can highlight how pressure to win can compromise academic integrity. Next is Oklahoma State University. In 2017, the FBI arrested Lamont Evans, the associate head basketball coach. He was accused of accepting up to $22,000 in bribes from financial advisors in exchange for steering student athletes towards those advisors once they entered the school. He served 3 months in prison. The university received significant penalties, which included 3 years of probation, a postseason ban for the 2020-2021 season, and a reduction in scholarships. This specific ruling was criticized because athletes were taking the brunt of this, but they didn't have anything to do with it. The next one is the University of Kansas. This occurred in 2019 when there were some major violations, and head coach Bill Self was charged with lack of institutional control. This allegation stemmed from a broader investigation into college basketball corruption, and within this testimony revealed that a former Adidas consultant funneled payments to families of top Kansas recruits. At the time, penalties were still pending, but consequences included postseason bans, scholarship reductions, and the suspension of Coach Self. At the University of Louisville, a major scandal emerged in 2015 when a staff member was accused of arranging escort services for recruits. Although the head coach claimed he was unaware of the misconduct, the NCAA determined he failed to properly monitor his staff, and he created an environment where unethical behavior could occur. So in 2018, the NCAA penalized Louisville by stripping 123 wins and vacating its 2013 national championship. The coach was later implicated in a separate scheme, and he was fired later. Second to last is University of Mississippi. This occurred in 2017 when the football program had 21 violations, which included recruiting violations, improper payments from boosters, manipulation of test scores. The university was also cited as a whole for lack of institutional control, and the head coach was charged with failing to properly oversee. Ole Miss admitted to some of the misconduct, fired staff members involved, and self-imposed a 1-year bowl ban. After review by NCAA's Committee of Infractions, the program received additional penalties, including a 3-year probation period, $5,000 fine, and postseason bans for the 2017 and 18 seasons. Finally is St. Leo University. One ongoing ethical issue in college athletics involves providing student athletes with special favors. In this specific case at St. Leo's, a women's volleyball player discovered her scholarship didn't cover housing and books after she had already enrolled in the school, and the head coach in response made payments to support her, but the NCAA ruled that these payments were impermissible benefits and violated compliance standards, and as a result, the university received 1-year probation, temporary reduction of volleyball scholarships, and a $4,000 fine. The first question for discussion is, how does the NCAA encourage collegiate athletics programs to develop a culture of ethics and compliance? The NCAA encourages ethics and compliance by creating clear rules, standards, and enforcement policies for college athletics programs. It requires universities to implement recruiting programs, educate coaches and athletes about ethical conduct, and monitor recruiting, academic eligibility, and athlete treatment. Schools are also held accountable through penalties such as probation, scholarship reductions, and postseason bans if violations occur, which we discussed in some examples above. These rules and consequences encourage universities to prioritize ethical behavior and maintain integrity in their athletics programs. Question 2 is it a valid criticism that the NCAA is based more on compliance than ethical values? I believe this criticism is somewhat valid. The NCAA focuses heavily on enforcing rules and penalizing violations, which reflects a compliance-based approach. While these rules are designed to promote fairness and integrity, simply following regulations does not guarantee ethical behavior. Some critics argue that schools may focus on avoiding penalties rather than truly promoting ethical decision-making and values within their programs. The third question for discussion is, how can student athletes, coaches, and university administrators demonstrate a proactive response to ethics and compliance? Student athletes, coaches, and administrators can demonstrate a proactive approach by promoting honesty, accountability, and transparency in their programs. This includes following NCAA rules, reporting violations when they occur, participating in ethics training, and creating an environment where integrity is valued more than winning. Leaders such as coaches and administrators should also actively monitor their programs and model ethical behavior so that athletes can understand that success should never come to the expense of integrity. Next, we're going to tie the case study back into our coursework and textbook. We're just going to look at a few different chapters of the book because you could connect this case study to every single chapter that we've done thus far. So we'll start with just chapter 1, which is the importance of business ethics. The book says that business ethics is defined as organizational principles, values, and norms that may originate from individuals, organizational statements, or from the legal system that primarily guide individual and group behavior in business. The important concept in business ethics is that right and wrong behavior is defined by the group. Business ethics within the NCAA has evolved throughout its time. An example includes how in the past, the NCAA worked on a strict principle of amateurism. This prohibited student athletes from receiving compensation or endorsements, while colleges still generated millions in revenue. The ethical focus at this time was compliance and reinforcement, which ensured that member institutions followed rules regarding recruitment and player eligibility. The NCAA now is navigating a major shift forced by legal, legislative, and economic pressures, moving away from amateurism and towards name, image, and likeness, also called NIL. This has shifted the ethical focus from enforcing rules against athlete compensation to managing a professionalized marketplace. In Chapter 2, the title is Stakeholder Relationships, where it is discussed that primary stakeholders are those whose continued association and resources are absolutely necessary for a firm's survival. In the NCAA, without the athletes, they would have nobody to protect. The athletes are the primary stakeholders, which are followed by colleges and universities, coaches and athletic staff, fans, media, corporate sponsors, and government and regulatory bodies. So, yes, there's so many stakeholders, but the athletes are the main ones. They're the ones playing the sport. We can look at Chapter 3, the institutionalization of business ethics. In the book, it is discussed the 3 dimensions of institutionalization, which is mandated boundaries, core practices, and voluntary boundaries. Mandated boundaries are externally imposed levels of appropriate conduct, such as laws, rules, and regulations. Core practices are documented best practices, often encouraged by legal and regulatory forces. And then voluntary boundaries include the beliefs, values, voluntary contractual obligations of a business. To connect to the NCAA in our case study, through mandated boundaries, the NCAA establishes official rules and compliance policies that schools must follow. The NCAA investigates violations and enforces penalties. These rules create clear boundaries for what is allowed and what is not allowed in college sports. Through core practices, the NCAA requires schools to maintain compliance departments, provide education and training, and conduct self-reporting and internal monitoring. These practices help integrate ethical behavior into the daily operations of athletic programs. Through voluntary boundaries, universities adopt additional internal policies than the NCAA requires. Athletic programs may implement ethics training and emphasize academic success, athlete well-being, and community engagement to strengthen their culture of integrity. The last chapter we're going to discuss is Chapter 9, Developing and Implementing an Effective Ethics Program. In the book, it says corporations are viewed not merely as profit-making entities, but also as moral agents accountable for their conduct to their stakeholders. The NCAA has responsibilities to all of its stakeholders to ensure college athletics operate fairly, ethically, and safely. The NCAA must protect athlete health, safety, well-being, and education. They must create and enforce clear rules for athletics at the schools and provide educational resources to coaches and athletic staffs. The NCAA must also maintain the integrity and credibility of college sports for its fans, media, and sponsors. The future of the NCAA involves adopting a model that puts their stakeholders, which is their athletes, their primary stakeholders, at the center. They would treat them as partners rather than just their laborers. Changing this perspective would focus more on the well-being and economic empowerment of student athletes. The NCAA will move into the new era where college athletics operate more like a professional sports team with athlete compensation, major legal reforms, and larger financial stakes shaping the organization's future. Here are my 2 resources, just the book and then one website that I use to get some information on the ethical evolution of the NCAA.